In this video, we're going to learn how to use our factoring skills to be able to solve a quadratic equation by using what's called the zero product property, which sounds very scary, but is in fact very basic. As solving quadratic equations using the zero product property. So first thing I'd like you to do, I guess I should have said this before, you should have your notebook out next to you and you should have titled this section. Now I'd like you to take a moment and I'd like you to figure out what the question mark would be in each of these questions. And then I'd like you to answer the question at the bottom. If two quantities multiply together to equal 0, what does that tell you? So pause until you're ready to move on. So hopefully what you noticed is that in each of these cases, when you multiply anything by 0, you're always getting 0. And then more importantly, you know that if two things multiply to get 0, you know that one of those numbers needed to have been 0. This does not work with addition, right? In that case, we would have needed to have negative 14. So the zero product property only works for multiplication. So down at the bottom, hopefully you explained something along the lines of at least one of those numbers must have been 0. Okay, so how do we apply this to quadratics? So if I had two numbers, let's call them x and y, I don't know what they are, but I do know that when they're multiplied together, they equal 0. Well, what does that tell you about x and y? Let's apply what we did on the previous page. Once again, pause, think about it, press play when you think you know. Now, in this case, this is actually a little bit different from what we said on the last page, because yes, it's true that either x or y is 0, but either x or y could be 0 to make the equation true, which in some ways means that they both could be 0, right? And that's kind of a weird distinction, but hopefully it'll make more sense when we look at a parabola and we think about how the fact that things are, you can have two solutions. So then we're going to do the same thing for this next question. So we have something in factored form, x plus 1, x plus 2 equals 0. Then we should be able to see that either this part equals 0 or this part equals 0, and that both of those will work. So the way we're going to solve is we're going to write it out both ways. So we're going to say that x plus 1 could equal 0 or x plus 2 could equal 0. And then we just solve. So in this case, we say that x can be negative 1 or negative 2. Now, normally we wouldn't always do this, but let's go back, let's plug back in those answers and just confirm that they do both work. So we've got x plus 1 times x plus 2 equals 0. Let's go ahead and try the negative 1 first. So this part here gives me a 0, and then times 1 equals 1. Why did I say 1 there? That's a 0. Sorry, guys. Okay, that's better. So 0 times 1 is a 0, so negative 1 works. And then we can try our negative 2. We can see there, negative 2 plus 1 gives us negative 1, and then times 0 also gives us 0. So you can see how in the first situation, it worked because we had a 0 here. In the second situation, it worked because we had a 0 here. So in fact, x can be both things. X can be either negative 1 or negative 2. Okay, so now let's do a little bit of practice. Think about this as what we do in class where I write a problem up on the board and then I walk around with a highlighter and I'm checking to see if you've got it right. Except I obviously can't check for you, so you're going to have to do that yourself by pausing and then playing when you think you have your answer. So I'll do each one at a time. So do the first one first and then press play to see what my answer was, and then do the next one, etc. So go ahead and do number 1 over here now. All right, so now that you're ready to check this one, let's do it. So first I broke up my two factors. I said that either one could equal 0. And then I'm going to solve. So I can see that x could equal -6. Or x could equal 1/2. If you got those answers, please give yourself a check mark of joy. Then pause again and do number 2. All right, ready to check number 2. So once again, I break up my factors so that they both equal 0. So I get x could equal 3. Or x could equal -10 thirds. Give yourself a check if you got those right. And then move on to number 3. So this one's weird. First of all, it's not factored yet. And second of all, it doesn't equal 0. So the first thing we need to do, if we're going to use the zero product property, then there has to be a product that equals to 0. So let's start by subtracting 2 from both sides. Now we have an x squared minus 4x minus 12 equals 0. That's good. We got the 0 part now, but we still don't have a product. So you're going to go ahead and factor. You're going to do a box and diamond, just like we worked on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. If you know what to do now, even though you were stuck at the beginning, go ahead and pause and finish it out. Okay, hopefully your box and diamond looks something like this, meaning that you would have x plus 2 times x minus 6 equals 0. And then you do what we did on the first two to find what those answers are. So you'd say x plus 2 equals 0 and x minus 6 equals 0, meaning that x could equal -2 or 6. And it's okay to write them this way. Actually, we probably should do an and. Let's do an and instead. Okay. All right, take a look at the next one. I'm trying to trick you here, so be careful. All right, so it's really, really tempting to just say that, oh, x must equal, let's see, -2 and a +3. However, this does not equal 0. In order to make it equal 0, we're going to have to add 4 to both sides. But I can't really add 4 to that mess on the other side, so I'm going to actually have to multiply it back out first. Hopefully you remember how to do that. So we're going to get x squared minus 3x plus 2x minus 6 equals -4, because I was not able to subtract that -4 yet. And then now I will, oh sorry, I wasn't going to subtract, I'm going to add it because I want to make it a 0. So now I have an x squared, and then minus x, and then minus 2 equals 0. And now we're at that same situation we were in right here, where we just need to do a box and diamond to factor. Pause if you think you can take it from here. I got x minus 2 times x plus 1, which means that x could equal 2, and it could also equal -1. All right, so you're going to be able to do lots more practice of the zero product property as this week goes on. For right now, I want us to talk about one of the main reasons why we would do this in an application in a math class. and that is to find the x-intercepts. And so we remember that the x-intercepts of a parabola are always going to be where some sort of an x value, where the y value equals 0. So they're always when y equals 0. So that means we can take our equation of our parabola and we can just replace 0 for the y. So we can say 0 equals 2x squared minus 9x minus 5. Now looking at the graph, we can sort of see that it looks like our roots are, our x-intercepts are also called roots. So roots is kind of a shorter word for x-intercepts. So we can visually see them here. If we didn't have the graph, that we wouldn't know that. So go ahead and pause now and solve this guy right here. See if it matches with the x-intercepts that we can see on the graph. So hopefully you started out by factoring, probably using a box and diamond, unless your factoring skills have gotten amazing over the last couple weeks, which would be awesome. This is what my box and diamond look like. So then I'll rewrite it in factored form. And then I do my zero product property. So I can see here that x could equal 5. And I can see that x can also equal negative 1/2. And when I look at my graph, I see there's the 5, and there is the negative 1/2. All right, so I like to end every video with a practice problem that I don't give you the answers to. So this is one for you to practice on your own. If you're stuck on it, you may absolutely phone a friend and ask someone else from class where they got on it. You'll see this video has been embedded into a Google form, and there's going to be a spot for you to enter in your answer there. And that's just a quick way for me to check and see how people are understanding this topic. Okay? Don't be afraid to rewind and rewatch as needed, especially if you get stuck on something. So you're just doing the same skill we've been doing in this video, finding the x-intercepts of the parabola by using that zero product property. You do not need to make the graph. You just need to use the zero product property. That should involve some factoring.